Hello, HBO family, fellow writers, producers, designers. What if I told you I had the next best show for your channel? A show with themes surrounding women paving their way to success in fields where men have always dominated. A show not just encompassing gender, but also race and the hardships that come with being a person of color trying to navigate the brutal entertainment industry. These themes are prevalent and are being talked about within the next generation of youth now more than ever. And with the growth of media and streaming, television is becoming a source of education and inspiration for audiences. And what if I told you the show I'm pitching is a true story? A true story of authenticity. And it's all based off one Japanese woman who has made her mark on the jazz industry, Toshiko Akiyoshi. I know what you're thinking. A Japanese woman in jazz? Well, that's exactly it. Her life story is quite unorthodox. Let me unpack it for you. She was born in 1929, a short while before World War II, and yet amidst this traumatic, violent, hardship-stricken time, the juxtaposingly upbeat and lively genre of jazz was blossoming. And although jazz was starting to diffuse itself in Japan, Akiyoshi's parents had actually emigrated to China, and that's where she was raised. Though they did introduce her to piano at age 6, she was strictly exposed to playing classical and traditional Japanese forms of music. This means that despite her not ever encountering jazz throughout her early life, fate still wrote it in the stars for her. And Toshiko's early life was good. They were wealthy and she played the music she knew how. But with every good plot, there has to be some sort of big moment, some sort of marker that changes the course of a character's once calm and stable life for good. A rising action, if you will. And that's exactly what happened. With the dawn of World War II, Manchuria, China, Toshiko's childhood hometown, was becoming increasingly dangerous for anyone of Japanese descent. So, her and her family had to quickly move back to Japan. They were also no longer able to pay for her instruments and lessons. Although this must have been a scary and anxiety-filled time for the now teenage Toshiko, it actually prompted her first ever encounter with jazz. Desperate to get her hands back on the piano, she got a job playing jazz at a dance hall. But this dance hall in particular was frequented by post-war soldiers during America's occupation of Japan. Toshiko actually mentioned it was the pianist Teddy Wilson's rendition of Sweet Lorraine that solidified her calling to jazz. Imagine a scene like this. Old and trauma-filled men who have been seen the depths of hell fighting in bloody battles, yet they come to Toshiko's dance hall. Sweet Lorraine plays. And for a moment, their dull eyes light up and they forget the things they've seen. They are soothed by this young and innocent small teenage woman. And for a moment, all is well. Let's keep it rolling. Toshiko wanted more than just playing in dance halls. She saw a bigger future for herself. And so she moved to Tokyo, the big city. And that's where she made her first ever jazz group in 1951. And she did pretty well for a small town girl. It was in this group that she was actually discovered by Oscar Peterson while he was touring in Japan. Peterson connected her to the producer Norman Granz, and she was able to record with him. This opportunity was the golden ticket that got her to the United States, where she studied at the famous Berklee College of Music in Boston in 1956. It was here in the States where things got pretty tricky. You see, jazz has always been dominated by men. In the 50s, the forefront faces of jazz in the US were faces like Duke Ellington, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, and Nat King Cole. And even more rare than being a woman in the jazz community was being an Asian woman. And so, in the early years of her arrival, the attention she was receiving was more so due to her appearance and novelty rather than her actual talent or artistry. This made it hard for her to establish herself as a serious artist because no one was actually listening. They were just, well, watching her gender and her race, though those weren't even supposed to be a part of the performance. And so I present to you a comment made by Toshiko herself. In those days, a Japanese woman playing like Bud Powell, the pianist, was something very new. So all the press, the attention, wasn't because I was authentic. It was because I was strange. This meant she had to work harder to be seen. And rather than sulk in the hardship, she did. She graduated from Berklee College of Music in 3 short years. And of course, every story has a bit of romance. She met and married her saxophonist husband, Charlie Mariano, and had a daughter and moved to New York. Despite this new task of being both a wife and a mother, she still worked just as hard to make a name for herself. She would play gigs at clubs in New York, furthering her piano skills, and also co-led the Toshiko Mariano Quartet with her husband. They even recorded a few group albums. This lasted for a while, but as shiny as things may have seemed, not all was smooth sailing because Mariano and Toshiko eventually split. But once again, when one door closes, another always opens. In 1969, Toshiko married a new man, a saxophonist and flutist by the name of Lou Tabakin. It was with him that she took a huge leap and moved across the country to Los Angeles, California in 1972. This was the city where she really proved herself as an arranger and composer. She and her husband formed a quote unquote rehearsal band to showcase some of her work. Little did she know that this grew to be the most well known and most innovative orchestras in big band in 10 years. But until then, she actually had a period of frustration, feeling as though she hadn't formed an identity within the jazz world. That's when one of her idols, Duke Ellington, passed away, a man who emphasized just how important his race is in his jazz music. This single piece of information did it. It inspired her to give back to jazz with her heritage. She added to jazz the things she truly loved, a piece of herself. And this, my friends, is what really makes Toshiko great. Her unique perspective allowed her to fuse her arrangements and songs with stories of Japan, making her art different from the rest. Her music went on to land her 14 Grammy nominations and even prompted her to be the first ever woman, and woman of color at that, to win a Best Arranger and Composer Award for Downbeat magazine. Throughout it all, she prevailed. So there you have it, her story. One of struggle, one of heartbreak, romance, determination, and what it means to be a woman, of what it means to be Japanese. And now it would be unfair to leave you without hearing a taste of her greatness. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you one of her songs titled, What Is This Thing Called Love?